Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Hello, and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with your host, me, Rosie D. Candia. Well, my friends, we have come to the final chapter of Peter Pan, and it has been quite an adventure, quite a tale, and a journey of your growth, my growth, all of our growth, and the growth of the characters, which leads me into the last chapter of Peter Pan. It's chapter 17, when Wendy grew up. I hope you want to know what became of the other boys. They were waiting below to give Wendy time to explain about them, and when they had counted 500, they went up. They went up by the stair because they thought this would make a better impression. Yeah, that makes sense. Imagine if they just flew in the friggin' house and they were like, hello, we're here, welcome us. Okay, these lost boys are not so lost. You notice that? They're not lost at all. Okay, they stood in a row in front of Mrs. Darling with their hats off and wishing they were not wearing their pirate clothes. They said nothing, but their eyes asked her to have them. They ought to have looked at Mr. Darling also, but they forgot about him. We all forget about Mr. Darling, because at this point, this man is ridiculous. He lived in the kennel until the kids returned, and he was the one that caused all the brouhaha, and he just sounds like a ridiculous man. But let's see how this fares. Of course, Mrs. Darling said at once that she would have them, but Mr. Darling was curiously depressed. Here we go, there's drama for your mama, but drama for your papa, right? And they saw that he considered 6 a rather large number. I must say, he said to Wendy, that you don't do things by halves, a grudging remark which the twins thought was pointed at them. The first twin was the proud one, and he asked, flushing, do you think we should be too much of a handful, sir? Because if so, we can go away. Father, Wendy cried, shocked. But still the cloud was on him. He knew he was behaving unworthily, but he could not help it. This man knows, he's conscious enough to know that he's acting like a dumbass, and then he still acts like a dumbass, and he continues to do it. Has he not grown throughout this whole friggin' journey? Come on, Mr. Darling, pick it up, brother. Jeez Louise. We could lie doubled up, said Nibs. I always cut their hair myself, said Wendy. George, Mrs. Darling exclaimed, pained to see her dear one showing himself in such an unfavorable light. Isn't that always, my God? Then he burst into tears, and the truth came out. He was as glad to have them as she was, he said, but he thought they should have asked his consent as well as hers, instead of treating him as a cipher in his own house. Oh, you see, here we go again. He's hurt, and he starts acting like a dick. We'll talk about this in the woo-woo. And, thank God he finally reveals himself. But isn't that what usually happens when someone's hurt? They start acting the fool, and at least he came out with it and, didn't kick them out. I don't think he's a cipher, Toodles cried instantly. Do you think he's a cipher, Curly? No, I don't. Do you think he's a cipher, Slightly? Rather not. Twin, what do you think? It turned out that not one of them thought him a cipher, and he was absurdly gratified and said he would find space for them all in the drawing room if they fitted in. We'll fit in, sir, they assured him. Then follow the leader, he cried gaily. Mind you, I'm not sure that we have a drawing room, but we pretend we have, and it's all the same. Hoopla! He went off dancing through the house, and they all cried, hoopla, and danced after him, searching for the drawing room. And I forgot whether they found it, but at any rate, they found corners, and they all fitted in. Oh, isn't that cute? So it's like the Brady Bunch, but it's all boys. Isn't that cute? Now they have, instead of 3 children, they got 9 children. And remember when they couldn't afford Wendy in the beginning? Oh, so many 12, 13 years ago. And suddenly now they're going to have the money. So Mr. Darling, they got the money. I don't know what he was holding out for. Where's Nana in all this? Ugh. As for Peter, he saw Wendy once again before he flew away. He did not exactly come to the window, but he brushed against it in passing so that she could open it if she liked and call to him. That is what she did. Hello, Wendy. Goodbye, he said. Oh, dear. Are you going away? Yes. You don't feel, Peter? She said falteringly. that you would like to say anything to my parents about a very sweet subject? No. About me, Peter? No. Girl, stop begging. He ain't into you. The boy is a child. He's a boy child. He ain't even a man child. Some man children can't even do that. You expect this little boy to tell them how he feels about you? Mrs. Darling came to the window, for at present she was keeping a sharp eye on Wendy. She told Peter that she had adopted all the other boys and would like to adopt him also. Would you send me to school? He inquired craftily. Yes, and then to an office? I suppose so. Soon I would be a man? Very soon. I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things, he told her passionately. I don't want to be a man. Oh, Wendy's mother, if I was to wake up and feel there was a beard. Peter, said Wendy the comforter, I should love you in a beard. And Mrs. Darling stretched out her arms to him, and he repulsed her. Keep back, lady. No one is going to catch me and make me a man. I hate to say this. There are a lot of men that don't want to be made a man either. And this ain't putting down all men, because there's some women too, but I'm talking in this instance. You know what? You should never chase men, and vice versa. Don't chase the other person. Just be yourself. If it's meant to be, trust me, they'll come to you. And if it ain't meant to be, you dodged a bullet, okay? That's all I'm saying, please. That's all I'm saying. But where are you going to live? With Tink, in the house we built for Wendy. The fairies ought to put it high up among the treetops where they sleep at nights. How lovely, cried Wendy so longingly that Mrs. Darling tightened her grip. I thought all the fairies were dead, Mrs. Darling said. Oh, there are always a lot of young ones, explained Wendy, who was now quite an authority. Because you see, when a new baby laughs for the first time, a new fairy is born. And as there are always new babies, there are always new fairies. They live in nests on tops of the trees, and the mauve ones are the boys, and the white ones are girls, and the blue ones are just little sillies who are not sure what they are. I shall have such fun, said Peter with eye on Wendy. It would be rather lonely in the evening, she said, sitting by the fire. I shall have Tink. Tink can't go a 20th part of the way round, she reminded him a little tartly. Sneaky telltale, Tink called out from somewhere round the corner. It doesn't matter, Peter said. Oh, Peter, you know it matters. Well then, come with me to the little house. May I, Mummy? That bitch just returned home, and now she's ready to ditch her mother and everybody else and go live with Peter and Tink again. Certainly not. I have got you home again, and I mean to keep you. But he does so need a mother. So do you, my love. Oh, all right, Peter said, as if he had asked her from politeness merely. But Mrs. Darling saw his mouth twitch, and she made this handsome offer to let Wendy go to him for a week every year to do his spring cleaning. Wendy would have preferred a more permanent arrangement, and it seemed to her that spring would be long in coming. But this promise sent Peter away quite gay again. He had no sense of time, and was so full of adventures that all I have told you about him is only a halfpenny worth of them. I suppose it was because Wendy knew this, that her last words to him were these rather plaintive ones. You won't forget me, Peter, will you, before spring cleaning time comes? Of course, Peter promised, and then he flew away. He took Mrs. Darling's kiss with him. The kiss that had been for no one else, Peter took quite easily. Funny, but she seemed satisfied. I'm going to cry. That's very sweet. It's very sweet. And remember they talked about Mrs. Darling had a kiss that was just reserved for him. And it's because even though he's this innocent sprite, he's this innocent child that never grows up, that always holds a place. And think about you, your innocent inner child that, didn't want to grow up and yet had to grow up. But where is that inner child? We'll talk about that in the woo-woo. Where is that inner child? I pose that to you now. Hee-hee, ha-ha, ho-ho. Of course, all the boys went to school, and most of them got into class 3, but Slightly was put first into class 4 and then into class 5. Class 1 is the top class. Before they had attended school a week, they saw what goats they had been not to remain on the island. But it was too late now, and soon they settled down to being as ordinary as you or me or Jenkins Minor. It is sad to have to say that the power to fly gradually left them. At first, Nana tied their feet to the bedpost so that they should not fly away in the night, and one of their diversions by day was to pretend to fall off buses. But by and by they ceased to tug at their bonds in bed and found that they hurt themselves when they let go of the bus. In time, they could not fly after their hats. Want of practice, they called it, but what it really meant was that they no longer believed. Oh, this is breaking my heart. This is breaking my heart because now they've become ordinary boys and they've lost the belief in magic. Michael believed longer than the other boys, though they jeered at him. So he was with Wendy when Peter came for her at the end of the first year. Oh, Peter, remembered that rat bastard, remembered to come for her. Of course Michael remembered because he was a little kid, so he still had the innocence and the belief that that could happen. Okay. She flew away with Peter in the frock she had woven from leaves and berries in the Neverland, and her one fear was that he might notice how short it had become. But he never noticed. He had so much to say about himself. Once again, the cocky little bastard, the narcissist, it's all about Peter. Everything is Peter. Ay vey. She had looked forward to thrilling talks with him about old times, but new adventures had crowded the old ones from his mind. Who is Captain Hook? He asked with interest when she spoke of the arch-enemy. Don't you remember, she asked amazed, how you killed him and saved all our lives? I forget them after I killed them, he replied carelessly. I'm sorry. When she expressed a doubtful hope that Tinkerbell would be glad to see her, he said, Who is Tinkerbell? Oh, Peter, she said, shocked. But even when she explained, he could not remember. Oh, there are such a lot of them, he said. I expect she is no more. I expect he was right, for fairies don't live long, but they are so little that a short time seems a good while to them. Are you freaking kidding me? Did you just break my heart and tell me Tinkerbell, that little bitch who we all grew to love, is dead now? My God. I think I'm going to need therapy with this after this book. I mean, I guess you're teaching kids about death, but oh my God, I can't believe Tinkerbell's dead. This is a heavy subject. You see, they're teaching kids about death. Oy vey, but he already forgot about her. I can't even. Oh my God. Wendy was pained, too, to find that the past year was but as yesterday to Peter. It had seemed such a long year of waiting to her. But he was exactly as fascinating as ever, and they had a lovely spring cleaning in the little house on the treetops. Next year, he did not come for her. She waited in a new frock because the old one simply would not meet. But he never came. Perhaps he is ill, Michael said. You know, he is never ill. Michael came close to her and whispered with a shiver, Perhaps there is no such person, Wendy. And then Wendy would have cried if Michael had not been crying. Peter came next spring cleaning, and the strange thing was that he never knew he had missed a year. That was the last time the girl Wendy ever saw him. For a little longer she tried for his sake not to have growing pains, and she felt she was untrue to him when she got a prize for general knowledge. But the years came and went without bringing the careless boy, and when they met again, Wendy was a married woman, and Peter was no more to her than a little dust in the box in which she had kept her toys. Wendy was grown up. You need not be sorry for her. She was one of the kind that likes to grow up. In the end, she grew up of her own free will a day quicker than the other girls. Oh, this is the loss of innocence, my friends. Remember that time? Remember the day that something happened that you were just like, yeah, I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. Or I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy. And I don't believe in that. And that's the loss of innocence, my friends. That loss of innocence. This is breaking my heart. I'm going to sob. Oh, Gavalt. All the boys were grown up and done for by this time, so it is scarcely worthwhile saying anything more about them. You may see the twins and Nibs and Curly any day going to an office, each carrying a little bag and an umbrella. Michael is an engine driver, slightly married a lady of title, and so he became a lord. Go figure. You see that judge in a wig coming out of that iron door? That used to be Toodles. The bearded man who doesn't know any story to tell his children was once John. Wendy was married in white with a pink sash. It is strange to think that Peter did not alight in the church and forbid the banns. Years rolled on again, and Wendy had a daughter. This ought not to be written in ink, but in golden splash. She was called Jane and always had an odd, inquiring look, as if from the moment she arrived on the mainland she wanted to ask questions. When she was old enough to ask them, they were mostly about Peter Pan. She loved to hear of Peter, and Wendy told her all she could remember in the very nursery from which the famous flight had taken place. It was Jane's nursery now, for her father had bought it at the 3% from Wendy's father, who was no longer fond of stairs. Mrs. Darling was now dead and forgotten. Okay. Tinkerbell's dead. Mr. Darling is fine. Of course, he outlives Mrs. Darling because he gave her all that friggin' agita. In Italian, agita is like upset stomach. It's like someone pisses you off and you hold that rumblings in your stomach. So Mr. Darling caused all that strife and grief, and he's still alive, and he's probably living in a little one-bedroom flat fine, and Mrs. Darling is dead. How old could Wendy be? She's got a little child. They got married in those days like at 20 years old. So what is she, like 23 and her mother's dead already? I don't like that. I don't like that. And she's been forgotten. What the hell is that? What the hell is that? I protest Mrs. Darling being dead. There were only 2 beds in the nursery now, Jane's and her nurse's, and there was no kennel, for Nana also had passed away. Okay. Yep, she died of old age. She died of old age, and at the end, she had been rather difficult to get on with, being very firmly convinced that no one knew how to look after children except herself. All right, that makes sense. I mean, we know that animals don't live as long as humans. Doesn't mean that I'm happy that Nana's dead, but we're going to let that be. Nana couldn't have a litter of babies, and maybe Nana's baby could be the nursemaid for Jane. That would have been nice. Oh, I like fairy tale endings, don't I? It's the emotional woman in me. What can I say? It's the perimenopausal woman. I'm kvetching over here. I'm like kvelling. Once a week, Jane's nurse had her evening off, and then it was Wendy's part to put Jane to bed. That was the time for stories. It was Jane's invention to raise the sheet over her mother's head and her own, thus making it tense, and in the awful darkness to whisper, "What do you see now?" "I don't think I see anything tonight," says Wendy, with a feeling that if Nana were here, she would object to further conversation. "Yes, you do," says Jane. "You see when you were a little girl." "Ah, that is a long time ago, sweetheart," says Wendy. "Ah, me, how time flies." "Does it fly?" asks the artful child, "the way you flew when you were a little girl?" Oh, Jane's a sassy little bitch. I love it. "The way I flew? Do you know, Jane, I sometimes wonder whether I ever did really fly." "Yes, you did. The dear old days when I could fly." "Why can't you fly now, Mother?" "Because I'm grown up, dearest. When people grow up, they forget the way." "Why do they forget the way?" "Because they are no longer gay and innocent and heartless. It is only the gay and innocent and heartless who can fly." "What is gay and innocent and heartless?" "I do wish I were gay and innocent and heartless." Gay, innocent, and heartless. So now we got to take all that on. Or perhaps Wendy admits she does see something. "I do believe," she says, "that it is this nursery." "I do believe it is," says Jane. Go on. They are now embarked on the great adventure of the night when Peter flew in looking for his shadow. "The foolish fellow," says Wendy, "tried to stick it on with soap, and when he could not, he cried, and that woke me, and I sewed it on for him." "You have missed a bit," interrupts Jane, who now knows the story better than her mother. "When you saw him sitting on the floor crying, what did you say?" "I sat up in bed and I said, 'Boy, why are you crying?'" "Yes, that was it," says Jane with a big breath. "And then he flew us all away to the Neverland, and the fairies, and the pirates, and the redskins, and the mermaid's lagoon, and the home under the ground, and the little house." "Yes! Which did you like best of all?" "I think I like the home under the ground best of all." "Yes, so do I. What was the last thing Peter ever said to you?" "The last thing he ever said to me was, 'Just always be waiting for me, and then some night you will hear me crowing.'" "Yes, but alas, he forgot all about me," Wendy said it with a smile. She was as grown up as that. "What did his crow sound like?" Jane asked one evening. "It was like this," Wendy said, trying to imitate Peter's crow. "No, it wasn't," Jane said gravely. "It was like this." And she did it ever so much better than her mother. Wendy was a little startled. "My darling, how can you know?" I often hear it when I am sleeping, Jane said. Ah, yes, many girls hear it when they are sleeping, but I was the only one who heard it awake. Lucky you, said Jane. And then one night came the tragedy. It was the spring of the year, and the story had been told for the night, and Jane was now asleep in her bed. Wendy was sitting on the floor very close to the fire so as to see to dawn, for there was no other light in the nursery. Wait a second, she's still darning. Well, we know she's still darning, but she got a lot of experience on the friggin' Neverland, and she's still friggin' darning. Oy vey. And while she sat darning, she heard a crow. Then the window blew open as of old, and Peter dropped in on the floor. He was exactly the same as ever, and Wendy saw at once that he still had all his first teeth. He was a little boy, and she was grown up. She huddled by the fire, not daring to move, helpless and guilty, a big woman. "Hello, Wendy," he said, not noticing any difference, for he was thinking chiefly of himself. And in the dim light, her white dress might have been the nightgown in which he had seen her first. "Hello, Peter," she replied faintly, squeezing herself as small as possible. Something inside her was crying, "Woman, woman, let go of me." "Hello, where is John?" he asked, suddenly missing the third bed. "John is not here now," she gasped. "Is Michael asleep?" he asked with a careless glance at Jane. "Yes," she answered, and now she felt that she was untrue to Jane as well as to Peter. "That is not Michael," she said quickly, lest a judgment should fall on her. Peter looked. "Hello. Is it a new one?" "Yes." "Boy or girl?" "Girl." Now surely he would understand, but not a bit of it. "Peter," she said, faltering, "are you expecting me to fly away with you?" "Of course. That is why I have come." He added a little sternly, "Have you forgotten that this is spring cleaning time?" She knew it was useless to say that he had let many spring cleaning times pass. "I can't come," she said apologetically. "I have forgotten how to fly." "I'll soon teach you again." "Oh, Peter, don't waste the fairy dust on me." She had risen, and now at last a fear assailed him. "What is it?" he cried, shrinking. "I will turn up the light," she said, "and then you can see for yourself." For almost the only time in his life that I know of, Peter was afraid. "Don't turn up the light," he cried. She let her hands play in the hair of the tragic boy. She was not a little girl heartbroken about him. She was a grown woman smiling at it all, but they were wet-eyed smiles. Then she turned up the light, and Peter saw. He gave a cry of pain, and when the tall, beautiful creature stooped to lift him in her arms, he drew back sharply. "What is it?" he cried again. She had to tell him. "I am old, Peter. I am ever so much more than 20. I grew up long ago." "You promised not to." "I couldn't help it. I am a married woman, Peter." "No, you're not." "Yes, and the little girl in the bed is my baby." "No, she's not." But he supposed she was, and he took a step towards the sleeping child with his dagger upraised. Of course, he did not strike. He sat down on the floor instead and sobbed, and Wendy did not know how to comfort him, though she could have done it so easily once. She was only a woman now, and she ran out of the room to try to think. My God, this is breaking my heart. Don't go breaking my heart. This is breaking my heart. Peter continued to cry, and soon his sobs woke Jane. She sat up in bed and was interested at once. "Boy," she said, "why are you crying?" Peter rose and bowed to her, and she bowed to him from the bed. "Hello," he said. "Hello," said Jane. "My name is Peter Pan," he told her. "Yes, I know. I came back for my mother," he explained, "to take her to the Neverland." "Yes, I know," Jane said. "I have been waiting for you." When Wendy returned diffidently, she found Peter sitting on the bedpost crowing gloriously, while Jane in her nightie was flying round the room in solemn ecstasy. "She is my mother," Peter explained, and Jane descended and stood by his side, with the look in her face that he liked to see on ladies when they gazed at him. "He does so need a mother," Jane said. Yes, I know, Wendy admitted rather forlornly. No one knows it so well as I. Goodbye, said Peter to Wendy, and he rose in the air, and the shameless Jane rose with him. It was already her easiest way of moving about. Wendy rushed to the window. No, no, she cried. It is just for spring cleaning time, Jane said. He wants me always to do his spring cleaning. If only I could go with you, Wendy sighed. You see, you can't fly, said Jane. Oh, brother, rub some more salt in that wound, Jane. Okay, little bitch. Of course, in the end, Wendy let them fly away together. Our last glimpse of her shows her at the window, watching them receding into the sky until they were as small as stars. As you look at Wendy, you may see her hair becoming white. I have a little gray too, and the reason my hair is pulled back is because Wendy's grown up, and plus, my roots are just that bad. You know, this quarantine thing hasn't been kind to my blonde hair, but I'm getting my silver in, and I'm very excited about it because I look forward to turning white and silver. Okay, because for aging is a gift, isn't it? Aging is a gift. Okay, we'll start with this. As you look at Wendy, you may see her hair becoming white and her figure little again, for all this happened long ago. Jane is now a common grown-up with a daughter called Margaret, and every spring cleaning time, except when he forgets, Peter comes for Margaret and takes her to the Neverland, where she tells him stories about himself, to which he listens eagerly. When Margaret grows up, she will have a daughter who is to be Peter's mother in turn, and thus it will go on, so long as children are gay and innocent and heartless. The end. Yes, I'm crying. I will show you a beautiful drawing of, these are the original drawings. Look at Peter and Jane. So there's Wendy grown up, as if she's old. She's all about 20. Little Peter and little Jane flying in solemn ecstasy. Okay, I'm very emotional, but I'm an emotional person because where do we begin? Where do we frickin' begin with all of this nonsense? Okay, first let's quickly talk about Mr. Darling being a dumbass. Like his only growth was this. He admitted to, okay, so he got a little persnickety and got upset and started acting the fool when he thought they weren't including him. But then he stood up and he expressed why he was upset. So I will say this is growth for Mr. Darling, as in your own life, right? And I do think it's important to notate, I always think it's important to notate these things, that we have to see growth in people the best that they can grow. And sometimes growth doesn't happen for everybody, and that's okay too, because we're all on different paths. So I'm going to encourage you to be gentle and kind to the people that you think should be more like enlightened or conscious, or be growing and developing and like growing up the way you think, because it's not your journey, it's their journey. So even though Mr. Darling may still be kind of still stuck in a cerebral, sense, he still at least had a little bit of growth. And I'd like you to see, even for yourself, where in your life you have grown. You may have grown through these weeks of hearing these, chapters and tapping into some stuff with the things that I've been encouraging you to do, or you've may grown during this time of quarantine. And I'd like you to celebrate the little things that you have developed and grown, and how you've matured in ways, and I'm not saying maturing as an adult, but maturing in a way of being more conscious and being more in touch with who you truly are. So I think that's important to celebrate that. And if you feel there are more ways that you could be working on, that's the whole point of the journey, continue to work on. And then also, if there are people in your life that have done some major growing that you want to commend them and celebrate them, I would encourage you to tell them, hey, I want to let you know, you've really been doing a lot of work on yourself, and I see it, and I think it's beautiful. I think that's wonderful too, because sometimes it's nice to get an affirmation that someone has developed or grown out of their, has done something different. So that's the whole Mr. Darling growing in his own way. And we all grow on our own timeline. Remember that, my friends. Don't expect people to be you. And if you suddenly become enlightened or conscious and stuff, it's great to share your knowledge, but you can't make people into what you think they should be. You can share, you can encourage, you can enlighten, and you can be loving and gentle and accept them for who they are, and let them find their own path. There's nothing wrong with you sharing, whether it's books you want to share or share a concept and what have you. But you have to understand, everybody grows on their own time. And then there's some people that just don't grow. And you know what? That's fine too, because they came here for something else, because everyone has a purpose. Now, lastly, the most important fact here, which has touched my heartstrings, which is just like Alice in Wonderland's growing up. We know these books, obviously, everything is about that magical sense of being when you were a kid. We've talked about this in last book and this book. And I think for me, it just saddens me that all of us lose that sense of being an inner child. Our inner child, we seem to ignore him or her. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is, we've been talking about the inner child, not this much, but we've talked about what were your dreams and goals and visions as a kid, or tapping into that inner child energy. And think about the things that, I would really encourage you, and I know this is going to sound out there, but to do a meditation or get quiet with yourself and talk to your inner child and see yourself as you were as a kid, right? And ask your inner child, what do you need from me right now? What is emotionally you need? What is it mentally or spiritually or even physically? Do you need a hug? Because you could even give your inner child a hug, honey. You could do all these visualizations. I know I'm going woo-woo, but I got to be honest with you. Your inner child, there's so many things that inner child has held on to that maybe have not been dealt with. And this is the point. You can deal, of course you can deal with things in therapy. And if there's major things that you need to deal with, please do the work and go to a therapist. I'm a very big person on therapy. Been in therapy multiple times. But also, just even thinking about things that might be some wounds. And it could be little things. And to hug your inner child, talk to your inner child, give the words that it needs to hear, like forgiveness, and then I love you. But also, find out what your inner child is really needing. Because, my friends, what your inner child needs, only you can give it to them, right? And once you give that inner child, once you really listen to what's going on inside, let me tell you, you start giving it to yourself, you will start growing in amazing ways, and you will heal parts of you that you never thought could be healed. You may also realize when you talk to yourself, and this is not like a voice in your head, okay? This is just like a meditation, what you need and what's been lacking from your life, and then what you can do to, put those things that have been lacking in your life to get that into your life. So this is, for me, this chapter is definitely, both this and the last chapter in Alice in Wonderland make me very weepy, because I think for all of us, we really need to get a sense of that childlike awe and wonder that we've lost. And because when we grow up, we become bitter and jaded, and most of the times, it's not our only experiences that do that. It's other people that put their crap on us. And what I'm going to encourage you to do right here, right now, is to release all the crap that's not yours, and to forgive all the crap that's yours, what you think is yours, and heal that shit so you can live a life of joy and wonder and childlike awe and wonder, and realize that you came here with the purpose. You are unique. You are a blessing, and you're a blessing to the world, and that we need you here, and also to follow your dreams, visions, and goals, and to dream even bigger than you could ever imagine. Because the point is this: we are stopping ourselves from manifesting the things that we desire or we came here to do, because we don't believe it's possible, because somebody told us it's not possible, or we perceived at a certain point in our life that is ridiculous. I can't think that big. No, my friends, I want you to dream big, vision big, go after it, come up with the game plan. Because the thing is this: dream big as a child would, and then plan as an adult would. That's the point. You still can dream big, and you can plan big. So see the bigger picture. Use your mind's eye and visualize, and believe in your heart of hearts it's possible. And I don't know what your dream is. No dream is too big, and it can be anything. I don't know what it is, whether it's a certain relationship, a certain goal, a certain personal, thing that you've always wanted to do, and you haven't done it. I don't know. Is it going for a triathlon? I don't know. Is it going to Machu Picchu? I don't know. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is start writing down those things that you think are impossible, that you can never have. Start visualizing you there doing it, and then taking the steps of how you're going to get there. All right? So, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed Peter Pan as much as I have. And I hope you've enjoyed this time together. And whatever happens in your life, I hope that you can walk away and think about, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell and Wendy, Michael, John, and the Lost Boys, and just think about how they didn't think anything was impossible. They just was in make-believe, and then shit appeared. And you know what? You can make shit appear too, because you are that powerful. Your thoughts become things. Start thinking it. So I wish you so much love, light, peace, and joy. And until we meet again for the next book. Oh, and I'm not going to tell you what the next book is. You'll have to wait and see. Anyway, happy day, magical magic to you. And I'm wishing you so much love, light, peace, joy, bliss, abundance, prosperity, health, gratitude, graciousness, magic, everything. I wish it all for you. And I'm sending you all of that to you. So peace and blessings. Namaste. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, Peter P. Now I'm going to go and cry. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Totally. I'm going to cry. And it's okay too.